Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a story that I think a lot of us can relate to. The day everything changed for a young guy named Daniel. You see, Daniel lived a pretty normal life. He worked a standard office job, went about his day-to-day, but he had this massive secret dream. He absolutely loved English and desperately wanted to speak it fluently. The catch? He was terrified to even try. But before we get into exactly how Daniel's story unfolds, I want you to actually pause and reflect on your own emotions for a second. Really think about it. How do you feel when you try to speak a new language? When you're about to open your mouth to speak English in front of other people, does your heart start racing? Are you excited? Or do you just feel, completely paralyzed by fear? For Daniel, the answer was definitely fear. He felt totally trapped by anxiety and nervousness. His brain would just flood with thoughts like, what if I make a mistake? Or what if they laugh at me? And honestly, those questions just stopped him in his tracks over and over again. Which makes total sense when you look at the three main sources of this kind of anxiety. When Daniel was alone in his room, his English was actually fantastic. But the second he thought someone else was listening, that fear took over completely. He was terrified of negative judgment, and it built this massive, invisible wall right between him and the outside world. This actually ties perfectly into what psychologists call self-efficacy theory. Basically, your belief in your own abilities directly impacts how you handle challenges. Daniel was caught in this really brutal cycle. His fear made him perform poorly, and then performing poorly just made him even more afraid. But one Monday morning, he looked in the mirror and finally said, "I don't want to live like this forever." He was just totally exhausted from making excuses. He needed a change. Which brings us to a massive turning point, actually embracing our mistakes. That very day at lunchtime, Daniel struck up a conversation with an older man at a local coffee shop. When Daniel confessed how scared he was about speaking English, the man dropped this absolute gem of advice. He said, "Daniel, you don't become confident before you start. You become confident because you start." It's so easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking like Homer Simpson here, right? We make one tiny mistake and we use it as an excuse to just pack it up and never try again. We literally let the fear of one small failure derail the entire journey. But the older man at the coffee shop hit the nail on the head. Every single mistake is literally just a lesson. Confident speakers don't just quit the second they stumble. They push through because they know that messing up is just a completely normal, unavoidable part of learning anything new. So, how do we actually get past this? Well, it starts with rewiring the brain. To break out of his rut, Daniel made a firm choice. He went home, opened his notebook, and wrote in big letters, "I will speak English every day." He realized he had to stop waiting around for this magical moment of perfection, stop overanalyzing every single grammar rule, and actually start building new neural pathways so he could respond instantly. And the way he did it was brilliant. Instead of getting bogged down staring at heavy, boring verb tables, Daniel focused on positive action. He wrote out simple, present, active sentences for himself. "I am learning English. I can improve. I am not afraid of mistakes." And he read these out loud, training his brain and making his voice stronger every single time. And repeating that action every single day is exactly how you go about building a strong foundation. Think of it like building a house. You need a rock-solid base. That base is your core motivation. For Daniel, his why was simply that he refused to live in fear anymore. When you connect your learning to a deeply personal reason like that, it gives you the ultimate power to push through those really tough, frustrating days. And as he stuck to his daily practice, Daniel started realizing something really cool. Making small corrections, like learning to say "turn on the light" instead of "open the light," these aren't failures at all. They're just tiny little adjustments that help you communicate better. He also learned to embrace asking for help. I mean, just like you wouldn't typically cut your own hair with a pair of scissors in the bathroom, you don't have to learn a language totally alone. Figuring out that getting a haircut sounds way more natural than cutting my hair came from interacting and getting feedback. Sure, at first, navigating all this felt like wandering through a confusing maze of double negatives and self-doubt. Honestly, it's easy to accidentally say, "I didn't do nothing," when you mean "I didn't do anything." But by practicing out loud every single day, those dark clouds of anxiety actually started to clear up. He became like the steady tortoise in the race, committing to a really consistent routine. Day 1, just 20 minutes of quiet practice in his room. By day 2, his voice was noticeably stronger and more confident. And by day 3, he felt ready to step outside and test his courage in the real world. So he goes to the local park And right away, he spots a woman reading an English book. Instantly, all those old fears rushed right back in. His heart started hammering in his chest. But he remembered the old saying, no pain, no gain. He knew for a fact that if he didn't face the discomfort right then and there, nothing would ever change. Ultimately, it all comes down to taking that first step. Every instinct in Daniel's body was screaming at him to just turn around and run back home. But then, the older man's advice echoed in his head. Don't wait until you are perfect. He realized that waiting for perfection was literally just a sneaky excuse to stay hidden. So he didn't run. Instead, Daniel took a massive, deep breath, walked right over to her, and broke his silence. He asked, "Excuse me, are you reading an English book?" She smiled and said yes. And just like that, despite every fear telling him not to, Daniel had successfully started his very first real-world English conversation. Daniel's story is absolute proof that the day everything changes isn't some magical date circled on a calendar. It is literally just the day you finally decide to try. So the question I want to leave you with today is this. What is stopping you from taking your very first step, making a mistake, and speaking today?